Introduction. This audiobook is produced by DJA-Audiobook, your source for focused, powerful content built to sharpen the mind and strengthen character. Unbreakable. The hidden code of emotional invincibility is not just about motivation or willpower. It's a full reset, designed to help you build a steady, structured life where discipline becomes identity. Across 10 chapters, you'll learn how to master your focus, overcome resistance, and recover from setbacks with strength and clarity. This isn't hype, it's a system. And by the end of this journey, you won't just feel more in control, you'll live it. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Procrastination. There's a moment we've all faced. The clock is ticking, the task is waiting, and yet, we pause, we scroll, we fidget. We tell ourselves we'll start in a few minutes, after one more video, one more snack, one more excuse. And in that quiet gap between what we intend to do and what we actually do, something powerful is happening, something far deeper than laziness. Procrastination isn't about being weak. It's not about being broken. It's about being human. But the truth is, if we don't learn how it works, it can quietly run our lives. It can steal years from our goals, confidence from our character, and clarity from our future. And that's why we're starting here. Not to judge ourselves, but to understand the machinery behind the delay. You see, your brain was never designed for 21st century pressure. It evolved to survive, not to thrive in a world of endless notifications, infinite choices, and invisible deadlines. What we call procrastination is often your mind trying to protect you from discomfort, and it's doing a pretty convincing job. But here's what most people never realize. Procrastination isn't about time. It's about emotion. It's a strategy your brain uses to avoid negative feelings. Stress, fear, boredom, uncertainty. The moment you sense them, your mind offers you an escape. Avoid the task. Seek pleasure. Find something easy, and it works, and for a while, until the deadline looms, until the guilt creeps in, until that whisper of, "Why didn't I just start earlier?" becomes louder than your motivation. This cycle, the avoidance, the temporary relief, the crash of regret, is called emotional avoidance. It's not a lack of discipline. It's a misfiring of your emotional regulation system. Your brain is choosing short-term comfort over long-term gain, not because you're lazy, but because it hasn't yet learned how to handle discomfort. With intention, but we can retrain it. Let's break this down even further. There's a concept in psychology called temporal discounting. It means your brain naturally gives more value to what's happening right now than to what might happen later. A 5-minute scroll on your phone feels more rewarding than a 5-year vision for your future. The emotional reward is immediate, the long-term benefit, distant, abstract. Now layer on another factor, fear of failure. What if you mess up? What if it's not perfect? What if people judge? Suddenly starting feels like a risk, not just a task, a test. And your brain once again offers safety. Delay, distract, postpone. It sounds like protection, but it becomes a prison, because the longer you delay, the heavier the task feels. And the heavier it feels, the harder it becomes to start. This is how procrastination snowballs, not from a lack of knowledge, but from a flood of internal resistance that never got named or understood. But now, you're seeing it. You're naming it. And that's where the change begins. There's another pattern at play here. It's called the present bias. It's the brain's tendency to prioritize what feels good now, even if it costs you later. It's why we choose 10 more minutes of rest over an hour of progress. It's why we postpone goals that matter for habits that numb. And until you understand that this is a bias, not truth, not fate, not who you are, it will keep making your decisions for you. So how do we interrupt it? It starts with noticing. When you feel resistance creeping in, pause. Don't judge it, observe it. Ask yourself, what emotion am I avoiding right now? Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's fear that it won't be perfect. And once you name it, you take away its power. Because now, you're not Avoiding a task. You're facing an emotion. And emotions, you can handle. Next, shrink the task. The brain loves progress, even the tiniest kind. Instead of telling yourself, I have to finish everything, say, I'm just going to work for 5 minutes. Just 5, that's it. Because what usually stops you isn't the task, and it's the weight of starting. Once you begin, momentum builds. That's the magic. Another powerful shift? Redefine success. Perfection is the enemy of action. If you're always aiming for flawless, you'll stay frozen. Instead, aim for finished. Aim for done. Aim for movement. Because you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You need to be present. You need to show up. And here's a secret. The brain loves rewards. After every task, even a small one, give yourself something. A break, a moment of pride, a mental high five. You're rewiring your system. You're teaching your brain that action equals reward, not punishment. But above all, speak kindly to yourself. The voice in your head matters more than you think. If it's filled with criticism, guilt, or shame, you'll keep avoiding. But if it's filled with compassion, curiosity, and courage, you'll keep coming back. This is what it means to shift from avoidance to action. Not through willpower alone, but through understanding, through strategy, through self-awareness. Because once you see that procrastination isn't your identity, it's a pattern, you can begin to change it. You can become someone who starts, someone who follows through, someone who trusts themselves to do what matters, and even when it's uncomfortable. That's the foundation of the relentless mindset, and it begins here. Chapter 2. Cultivating Unstoppable Motivation. There's a common myth that motivation is something you have to wait for, that it strikes like lightning, out of nowhere, and only then can you move. Only then do you feel ready. But if you've lived long enough, you know how unreliable that kind of motivation is. Sometimes it shows up. Most of the time it doesn't. And the longer you wait for it, the more powerless you feel. But here's the truth. Motivation isn't a mood. It's a mechanism. And it's one you can learn to control. You don't have to wait for energy to strike. You can build it, sustain it, feed it. Even when life feels heavy. Even when everything around you says, not today. So the question isn't, how do I get motivated? The real question is, how do I build a life where motivation becomes automatic? To do that, we first need to understand that not all motivation is created equal. Most people live on a diet of external motivation, rewards, praise, pressure, deadlines. It works. For a while. But as soon as the external source disappears, so does the drive. What we're after is something deeper, something stronger. It's called intrinsic motivation, the kind that comes from within. It's when your actions align with your values, when your goals feel personal, meaningful, and connected to who you want to become, not who someone else expects you to. You feel it when you work towards something that excites your soul, even if it's hard, even if no one's watching. It's not about chasing approval, it's about chasing alignment. So if you want unstoppable motivation, you need to go inward. Start by asking yourself, why does this matter to me? Not why it matters to your boss, your partner, or your social media following, but why it matters to you. What does this goal say about the kind of life you want? The kind of person you're becoming? Because the more personal your why becomes, the stronger your motivation will feel. Purpose is fuel. Without it, even small tasks feel like a burden. With it, even big tasks feel worth it. Next, make the vision real. Most people think in vague goals. I want to be successful. I want to be healthier. I want more freedom. But your brain doesn't respond to vague, it responds to vivid, it responds to detail, it responds to story. So don't just say, I want to succeed. Paint the picture. What does success look like to you? Where are you living? What do your mornings feel like? What kind of work are you doing? Who's around you? How do you walk? Into a room? Create that future with such clarity that your mind starts to believe it's possible. Because once it believes, it begins to build. Now link the vision to today. This is where most people fall off. They see the mountain, but they can't see the first step. And if you can't connect your daily actions to your future dreams, you'll always feel unmotivated. So ask yourself this: what can I do today, even something small, that gets me 1 inch closer to that version of myself? It could be a 10-minute workout, a page in your journal, saying no to something that drains you, saying yes to something that scares you. Tiny actions, done daily, reinforce the identity you're building. They tell your brain, this is who I am now. And when your actions and identity align, motivation becomes automatic. This is also where habit comes into play. Motivation isn't always loud or fiery. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, repetitive, and that's okay. In fact, that's powerful, because what you do consistently is stronger than what you do occasionally with hype. Now let's talk about resistance, because even with purpose and clarity, you'll still face days where you don't feel like it. Days where doubt whispers, days where energy dips, and that's when motivation needs a backup system. So create rituals, not just routines, but meaningful practices that reconnect you with your vision. Maybe it's a 5-minute morning affirmation. Maybe it's reviewing your goals at night. Maybe it's walking in silence to clear your mind before you begin work. Motivation isn't just about doing, it's about remembering. Remembering who you are, why you started, what's waiting for you on the other side of this moment. Another key? Celebrate the process. Most people only reward outcomes mode, the weight lost, the money made, the goal achieved. But your brain needs to feel rewarded along the way, not just at the end. So when you show up, celebrate that. When you follow through, even for 10 minutes, acknowledge it. Progress is the most addictive form of motivation. So track it, see it, feel it. Let your brain know we're moving forward. And lastly, surround yourself with reminders of who you're becoming. Your environment matters. If you're always surrounded by noise, clutter, or people who drain you, your drive will suffocate. Design a space, digital and physical, that reflects your values. Books that inspire you, notes from your future self, clean spaces that energize your mind, people who challenge you, not compete with you. Because motivation isn't just internal, it's also environmental. And the more you control what surrounds you, the easier it becomes to protect what's inside you. So no, you don't have to wait for motivation. You just have to understand it, feed it, protect it, and connect it to the life you truly want, not the one you've been tolerating. This is how relentless people stay driven, not because they always feel like it, but because they've built systems, habits, and environments that make motivation inevitable. And when you do that, you won't. Just move once and you'll keep moving with purpose, with power, with heart. That's what unstoppable motivation looks like. And it's yours to build. Chapter 3. The Foundational Pillars of Discipline. Discipline doesn't begin with willpower. It begins with energy, with clarity, with rhythm. Most people think of discipline as something purely mental, a mindset, a grind, a choice made, over and over again in spite of everything. And yes, mindset matters. But the deeper truth is that real lasting discipline starts with the body, because your mind can only function at its best when your body isn't running on fumes. When you're tired, foggy, dehydrated, or unfueled, no amount of motivation or strategy will hold. You'll slip, stall, or spiral, not because you're weak, but because you're worn down. This is why the truly relentless don't just train their minds, they train their lives. And that begins with 3 foundational pillars: sleep, nutrition, and movement. Let's start with the one most people underestimate: sleep. You can't build discipline on 4 hours of rest. You can't show up sharp if your body is drained. Sleep isn't a luxury, it's a system reset. It's where your brain processes information, clears stress hormones, repairs the nervous system, and restores willpower. Yes, willpower is a resource, and it's deeply connected to rest. Ever notice how your decision-making gets worse late at night? Or how you snap more easily when you're exhausted? That's not character, that's chemistry. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-control and focus, needs recovery. Without it, everything becomes harder than it needs to be. So if you're serious about becoming unbreakable, guard your sleep like your future depends on it. Because it does. Next, nutrition. And no, this isn't about perfection. It's about intention. Your brain is fueled by what you eat. If you're living on sugar spikes, fast food, and constant caffeine crashes, you're setting yourself up for mood swings, mental fog, and emotional instability. That's a tough foundation to build discipline on. You don't need a complicated plan. You need stability. Eat food that gives you real energy, not just short-term stimulation. Drink more water than you think you need. And reduce the stuff that creates spikes and crashes, because every crash chips away at your focus and fire. Your discipline isn't just a thought, it's a physical state. And when you nourish your body, your mind follows. Now let's talk about the third pillar, movement. You don't need a six-pack or a gym membership, you need motion. Every day. Why? Because movement regulates emotion. It resets your nervous system. It clears your mind. It gets you unstuck. Some of your best ideas won't come when you're sitting and stressing. They'll come while you're walking, lifting, stretching, or sweating. Movement turns inertia into momentum, and it doesn't have to be extreme. A 20-minute walk, a short stretch, a set of push-ups, the point isn't perfection. The point is activation. You are a biological machine, and machines run better when they move regularly. When these three pillars, sleep, fuel, and motion, become part of your rhythm, you create something powerful, a body that supports your mission. Now, let's bring in two more elements, structure and environment. Discipline thrives in structure, not rigid rules but flexible systems, waking up at the same time, starting your work with the same ritual, ending the day with intention. These rhythms train your brain to enter focus without resistance. Every time you create predictability, you reduce mental friction. You save energy. You move faster. Because decisions become automatic. Habits become natural. Think about it. You don't decide whether to brush your teeth each night. You just do it. That's what we're building. A life where discipline isn't a fight. It's just who you are. But structure isn't enough on its own. You also need an environment that doesn't sabotage you. Take a hard look around you. Is your space cluttered or calm? Is your phone pulling your attention every 5 minutes? Are the people around you helping you rise or holding you back? Because discipline isn't just what happens inside you. It's also what surrounds you. If you're trying to stay focused in a chaotic space, in digital or physical, you're working twice as hard. So clean up the clutter, delete the distractions, curate your inputs, make your environment match your goals, not your old habits, and finally, let's talk about something most people skip, non-negotiables. These are the habits you commit to, no matter how you feel, even on bad days, even when it's raining, even when no one is watching. They might be small, drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, journaling for 5 minutes at night, doing 10 minutes of movement, saying no to toxic news first thing. But the power isn't in the size, it's in the consistency, because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rewrite your identity. You prove, with action, that you're someone who follows through. This is how true discipline is built, not from dramatic sprints, but from steady pillars, from a body that's rested, fueled, and moving, from routines that support, not strangle, from spaces that inspire, from simple habits that anchor your days. So if you've ever told yourself, I just need more discipline, start here. Build the foundation, because once your body, your space, and your rhythm align, discipline becomes the natural result, not a struggle, not a stretch, just the new standard. And once that's in place, the next step is making progress automatic. Chapter 4. building automatic habits for effortless progress. There's a quiet power in the things you no longer have to think about. When you wake up and brush your teeth, you don't question it, you don't resist it, you just do it. Now, imagine if that same sense of ease and automatic motion applied to the way you worked out, tackled priorities, ate mindfully, or focused without distraction. Imagine if progress didn't feel like a fight, but a rhythm. That's what we're building in this chapter. Not just discipline, not just intention, but automated progress. Habits so rooted in your identity that they guide your day without burning your energy. Because the truth is, discipline makes you strong, but habits make you unstoppable. Habits are how the mind conserves energy. Once something is repeated enough, your brain builds a shortcut. It stops thinking about whether or not to do the task and just does it. That's efficiency. That's leverage. And in a world filled with endless decisions, that's freedom. But here's the problem. Most people try to build new habits in the worst way possible, by relying on motivation. They say, I'm going to start working out every day, or I'm going to stop eating sugar forever, and they might do it for 3 days. But then life happens. Energy dips, stress creeps in, old patterns return, and because the habit wasn't designed for the real world, it collapses the moment the conditions change. So let's flip the script. Let's stop chasing motivation and start designing behavior. And it begins with understanding the structure of a habit. Every habit, good or bad, has a loop, a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the trigger. It might be a time of day, a place, an emotion, or even a smell. The routine is the behavior, the action you take, and the reward is what your brain gets from doing it: relief, pleasure, pride, or even just comfort. If you want to build a habit that sticks, you need to control each part of that loop. Let's start with the cue. If your cue is unclear or unreliable, the habit won't take root. So you need to anchor it to something real. Instead of saying, I'll journal more, say, I'll journal every night after I brush my teeth. That's called habit stacking, attaching a new habit to an old automatic one. Brushing. Your teeth is already locked in. So by attaching something new to it, you increase the chances that it will stick. Next, the routine itself. Make it small, smaller than you think. If the habit feels heavy, your brain will resist it. So instead of saying, I'm going to read for an hour, say, I'm going to read 1 page. Instead of, I'll meditate for 20 minutes, try, I'll sit in silence for 2. Because once you start, momentum builds. The key is to lower the friction. Make starting so easy that not doing it feels silly. Then comes the reward. Your brain needs to feel something positive immediately after the habit, especially in the early stages. So celebrate, literally. Smile. Say, yes, I did it. Check it off on a habit tracker. Say something kind to yourself. Give yourself a small dopamine boost, because this is how habits get wired in, through repetition and reward. Now let's talk about breaking bad habits. And this is equally important. You don't break bad habits by resisting them. You break them by redesigning the loop. Remove the cue. If your phone is the trigger for endless distraction, don't just vow to be stronger. Move the phone. Turn off notifications. Put it in another room. Increase friction. Make the bad habit harder to do. If you always reach for junk food, don't just promise to eat better. Remove the trigger food from your space. Put healthy snacks in reach. Make the bad habit invisible and the good habit easy. This is called environmental design, and it's one of the fastest ways to change behavior. The less energy you need to resist something, the more energy you'll have to build something new. You're not weak if you struggle to break a habit. You're just wired for efficiency. So change the wiring. Now let's layer in something else: accountability. It's not just about having someone watch you. It's about creating a loop of expectation. When someone else knows what you're working on, you're more likely to follow through. When you track your habit, even if just for yourself, your brain begins to associate Effort with reward. One powerful method: use a visual tracker, a calendar, a streak counter, a simple notebook. Each check mark becomes proof. I'm doing this. I'm becoming this. Because that's what we're really doing here. Not just performing tasks, but shifting identity. You're not just someone who runs. You're a runner. Not someone who writes. A writer. Not someone who tries. Someone who shows up, consistently. Habits aren't just about performance. They're about proof. Proof to your brain. Proof to your heart. Proof that you are becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to think about discipline, because discipline is now a part of your operating system. So what does this mean practically? Start small. One habit. One cue. One reward. Track it. Celebrate it. Adjust it. Protect it. And let it build. Because small things, done consistently, become powerful forces over time. You don't need to change your life overnight. You just need to choose one behavior and repeat it until it becomes who you are. And when that happens, when progress becomes effortless, that's when the game changes. That's when you stop chasing motivation, because momentum is now carrying you. That's when discipline stops feeling like effort, because it's now a rhythm. And that's when you stop hoping for transformation, because you've already become the kind of person who never stops. Building effortless progress isn't a myth, it's a design. And now you know how to build it. Chapter 5. Conquering resistance and negative self-talk. You know the feeling. You've got everything planned. You're ready to take action. And then suddenly, something invisible pushes back. You stall, you hesitate, you question yourself, and just like that, the spark is gone. This isn't laziness. It's not even fear of the task. It's something quieter, sneakier, and far more powerful. It's resistance. Resistance is that invisible weight that shows up the moment you try to grow. It whispers that you're not ready. It reminds you of everything that could go wrong. It tells you to wait, to rethink, to play it safe. And if you're not careful, you'll believe it. But here's the truth. Resistance is not a signal to stop. It's proof that you're moving in the right direction. It only shows up when you're doing something that matters, when you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, when you're becoming someone you've never been before. So instead of fearing resistance, it's time to study it, name it, challenge it, and most importantly, move through it. One of the biggest drivers of resistance is something we rarely notice: negative self-talk. That quiet voice in your head that says things like, "This isn't good enough. You're too far behind. Who are you to try this? Maybe tomorrow." And over time, those thoughts don't just affect your mood. They shape your identity. They chip away at your belief in yourself. They keep you small. But here's something powerful. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one listening to it, and once you realize that, you can start rewriting the script. Let's begin with awareness. The next time you feel resistance, pause. Ask yourself, what am I saying to myself right now? What's the story I'm telling? You might notice it's fear, or perfectionism, or shame, or doubt. Whatever it is, bring it into the light, because once you name it, it loses power. Then ask, is this thought helpful? Is this thought even true? Because most of the time it's not. It's an echo of an old experience, a wound, a moment of rejection you never fully healed. And your mind is trying to protect you from feeling that pain again. But the cost of that protection is progress. So we need to go deeper. Let's talk about perfectionism, one of the most common forms of resistance. It sounds noble. I just want to do it right. I'm not ready yet. I'll start once it's perfect. But perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of being seen starting small. But starting messy is how every expert begins. Every author writes terrible first drafts. Every athlete stumbles in early training. Every builder lays shaky first bricks. You are allowed to begin before you're ready. You are allowed to be imperfect, Because the goal isn't to get it perfect, it's to get it going. Progress doesn't come from flawless action. It comes from consistent, courageous steps, even when they're awkward, uncomfortable, or incomplete. Now let's talk about another resistance trigger, the need to feel motivated first. We've covered this already, but it's worth repeating. Action creates emotion, not the other way around. Waiting to feel ready is often resistance in disguise. The key is to act before you feel like it, to lean in, to take one step, to start small. Because once you're in motion, everything gets easier. Here's another powerful practice. Self-compassion. This isn't softness, it's strength. Being kind to yourself when you fall short doesn't make you weaker, it makes you resilient. When you mess up, and you will, how you speak to yourself in that moment decides what happens next. If you criticize yourself, you shrink. If you shame yourself, you sabotage progress. But if you speak gently, it's okay. Let's try again. You recover faster. You bounce back. You build a relationship with yourself based on trust. Self-compassion isn't a luxury. It's a tool for high performance. Now let's touch on mindfulness, the practice of becoming aware of your thoughts without getting lost in them. Even 5 minutes of stillness, of breathing, of noticing your thoughts like clouds passing in the sky can radically reduce the power of resistance. Because when you become the observer, you stop being the prisoner. You begin to see, clearly, that not every thought deserves a reaction. Not every emotion needs to be fixed. Some things just need to be noticed, and once noticed, they pass. Mindfulness trains you to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, and that's where the real transformation happens. Because the more you're willing to feel, the more you're able to act. That uncomfortable moment before starting? That's a doorway. The fear before launching something new? That's a signal. The voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" That's your old self resisting your new one. And you don't have to silence that voice, you just have to walk forward anyway. Every time you do something you didn't feel ready for, you grow. Every time you act in spite of doubt, you build grit. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even when it's hard, you become unbreakable. So the next time resistance shows up, don't run. Recognize it, respect it, then move anyway. Because you're not here to be fearless. You're here to be courageous, and courage means acting even while the fear is still present. This is how you conquer resistance. Not by fighting it with force, but by responding with awareness, self-compassion, and relentless forward motion. And every time you do, you prove to yourself that voice of doubt, it was never in charge. You are. Chapter 6. Effective Planning and Prioritization. Discipline without direction becomes exhaustion. You can wake up early, stay focused, and push through every obstacle. But if your energy is scattered across low-value tasks or constantly responding to distractions, you're not progressing and you're simply moving. That's why planning and prioritization are not just tools of productivity. They're foundations of sustainable discipline. When people think about planning, they often imagine rigid schedules or endless to-do lists. But true planning is about clarity. It's the ability to step back and decide with intention what truly matters. It's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things. Every day presents dozens of choices, each one carrying its own weight. Without a clear structure, we default to what's easiest or most urgent, not what's most important. Over time, that habit silently robs us of momentum. The first step to mastering your days is understanding your bigger picture. What are you building toward? What kind of life are you shaping with your daily actions? Without that broader context, planning becomes reactionary. You find yourself putting out fires, responding to emails, checking off minor tasks, all while the bigger goals quietly drift out of reach. That's where prioritization becomes essential. Not everything deserves your time, and not everything that screams for attention is meaningful. The key is to sort tasks not by how loud they are, but by how deeply they move you forward. One useful framework is the Eisenhower matrix, a simple, but powerful way to classify tasks as urgent or important or both. Urgent tasks are time-sensitive. Important tasks are goal-driven. The discipline lies in focusing on what's important before it becomes urgent. This means you have to learn to say no, not just to people, but to impulses. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you're saying no to something essential. You need to protect your time like it's your most valuable currency, because it is. Money can be earned, energy can be recovered, but time, once spent, never returns. Effective planning also requires breaking down large goals into manageable steps. Many people avoid action not because they're unmotivated, but because their goals feel too vague or overwhelming. Write a book, or get in shape are not actionable steps, they are outcomes. Discipline thrives when you translate those outcomes into clear, doable actions. Write for 30 minutes. Go for a 20-minute walk. Prepare a healthy lunch. Once you define the next step, the mountain becomes a path. Another planning tool that supports discipline is time blocking. This method involves assigning specific tasks to specific time slots during your day, rather than leaving your to-do list open-ended. When you know that your most focused hours are reserved for your most important work, distractions lose their power. Your day takes shape with intention. Your energy gets directed instead of drained. But even the best plans fail when we overload them. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot do everything. And you were never meant to. A focused day is a successful day even if only 3 or 4 key actions are completed with care. The difference between feeling busy and feeling fulfilled often comes down to how clearly you chose your focus. Boundaries are also a part of planning. If you don't set boundaries around your time, the world will. Social media, notifications, unnecessary meetings, even other people's emergencies will quietly fill the space where your discipline should live. You must learn to defend your attention with quiet authority. That might mean putting your phone in another room. It might mean turning down an invitation. It might even mean disappointing someone in the short term to honor your long-term vision. Discipline without boundaries is eventually burned out. There's also the trap of perfectionism in planning. Many people obsess over finding the perfect system or routine, and in doing so, they avoid the very thing they're trying to build: consistent action. You don't need a color-coded calendar or a fancy app to succeed. You need a system that works for you, even when life gets messy. Flexibility is not failure. If your plan falls apart, adjust, but never abandon. The goal is progress, not rigidity. Now let's address another critical point: review. Effective planning isn't just about looking forward, it's also about looking back. At the end of each day or week, take 5 minutes to reflect. What worked? What drained you? What needs adjusting? This isn't about self-criticism. It's about awareness. That reflection allows you to refine your approach. It transforms every day into a learning loop instead of a blind repetition of effort. Lastly, bring emotion into your planning. Logic alone doesn't drive behavior. Feeling does. So when you look at your schedule, ask yourself, does this day excite me? Does it align with who I'm becoming? If not, something's off. The most effective plans are not just efficient, they're meaningful. They reflect your priorities, not someone else's agenda. They pull you forward, not just push you through. When you begin planning like this, with clarity, focus, emotion, and reflection, your days begin to change. And when your days change, your life follows. You stop drifting. You stop scrambling. You start leading. And you do it not through more effort, but through smarter direction. Discipline without direction is noise. Discipline with direction is a force of nature. Planning is how you aim that force. Prioritization is how you sharpen it. And consistency, day after day, is how you turn that force into real, lasting progress. Chapter 7. The Power of Focused Work. We live in a world of constant interruption. Notifications light up our screens. Messages compete for our attention. Tasks are stacked on top of tasks, and somehow, Even when we try to focus, our minds keep drifting. In this environment, doing anything deeply has become rare. And because it's rare, it's now one of the most valuable skills you can master. Focused work isn't just about productivity. It's about reclaiming your time, your attention, and your sense of control. It's the ability to pour yourself fully into something without splintering your energy across 1,000 fragments. And it's in those stretches of uninterrupted focus that your best work, your clearest thinking, and your deepest growth happen. But most people have forgotten how to focus, not because they're incapable, but because they've been trained to be distracted. Every ping, every scroll, every app has taught the brain to expect novelty every few seconds. And that expectation has slowly weakened our ability to stay with one thing long enough to make real progress. To rebuild this strength, you need to treat focus like a muscle. And just like any muscle, it doesn't grow from occasional effort. It grows through consistent training, through structure, practice, and deliberate use. The first step is to reduce friction. The brain resists anything that feels difficult or uncertain, so you need to make entering a focused state as smooth as possible. That means creating a space, physical or digital, where focus feels natural. Start by eliminating visible distractions. Clear your desk. Close the tabs you don't need. Silence unnecessary notifications. Turn off the background noise you've convinced yourself helps you concentrate but actually fragments your awareness. Then, protect that space with time. Set boundaries around when you'll focus and how long you'll work. A powerful tool here is time blocking, choosing a specific window where you do only one task and nothing else. During that block, your only responsibility is to be present. Not perfect, not productive in 10 ways at once. Just present with the work you chose. For many people, 25 to 45 minutes of focused time, followed by a short break, is enough to start building momentum. This is the core of techniques like the Pomodoro method, which are less about the clock and more about rhythm. It's not about grinding for hours without pause. It's about learning how to enter deep work with full attention, then recharge briefly before going again. Now let's talk about intention. Focused work means knowing exactly what you're working on and why it matters. If you sit down without clarity, you'll drift. Your mind will seek easier tasks or get lost in busyness that feels productive but changes nothing. Before you begin any focused session, define your goal. What's the one thing you want to complete? Be specific. When your brain knows what success looks like, it stops searching for an escape and starts solving. Equally important is the ability to embrace boredom. Yes, boredom. Deep work is quiet. It's repetitive. It's not always exciting. But in that stillness, you train yourself to stop chasing stimulation and start building resilience. You begin to recognize that most distractions aren't necessary. They're just habits of avoidance. And the more you lean into focus, the less appealing those habits become. You'll also need to manage your energy. Focus is fueled by rest, nutrition, and emotional regulation. If you're sleep-deprived, overstimulated, or carrying unresolved stress, focus will feel like a fight. Take care of your body so your mind can work at full capacity. A short walk, a glass of water, even a few minutes of quiet breathing before you begin can reset your focus far more effectively than pushing through mental fatigue. One of the most common obstacles to deep work is the presence of digital distractions. Social media, instant messaging, and even email create a false sense of urgency that fractures your concentration. To reclaim your attention, build rules for your digital space. Turn off non-essential notifications. Check your messages at set times instead of reacting to every buzz. Use website blockers if necessary to remove temptation altogether. You're not weak if you need help staying focused. You're just human, in a system designed to exploit attention. Another helpful strategy is batching similar tasks together. When you switch between different types of work, like writing an email, jumping into a meeting, then working on a creative project, you trigger what's called context switching. This comes with a cognitive cost. Each switch burns mental fuel. To reduce this drain, group tasks by category. handle emails during one window, schedule calls back to back, save deep creative work for your most alert hours. This not only preserves energy, it sharpens focus, and finally, track your progress. Focused work becomes more rewarding when you can see what you've built. Keep a simple log of what you complete during each deep work session. This isn't about pressure, it's about reflection. When you see the results stacking up over time, your brain begins to associate focus with progress. And that association reinforces the habit. You're not trying to become a machine. You're trying to become intentional. Focused work is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters with presence and clarity. In a distracted world, it's a radical act of self-respect. It's how you protect your vision, execute your plans, and separate motion from meaning. Most people are busy, but very few are focused. The difference shows in the results, and in the sense of peace you carry when you know your time wasn't wasted on the trivial. Discipline trains the will, but focus sharpens it, and when the two come together, your efforts stop feeling scattered and start feeling unstoppable. Chapter 8. Building Resilience Against Setbacks. No matter how strong your discipline becomes, no matter how carefully you plan or how focused your work is, one truth will remain. Setbacks are inevitable. Things will go wrong. You will stumble. Life will interrupt your rhythm. And if you haven't learned how to handle those moments with strength and clarity, they can undo months of effort in a single emotional spiral. But resilience is what separates those who pause from those who quit. It's the quality that keeps you steady in a storm, grounded in uncertainty and forward-moving even when progress feels impossible. And more than any technique or strategy, it is this inner strength that defines the relentless. Resilience is not about ignoring pain or pretending you're unaffected. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not. Resilience begins with acceptance, not passive resignation, but a conscious recognition that difficulty is a natural part of growth. When you expect challenges, you stop being surprised by them. You learn to respond instead of react. That alone changes everything. When something doesn't go according to plan, whether it's a failed goal, a personal loss, or a moment of complete burnout, your first instinct might be to push harder, to double down. But sometimes pushing isn't what you need. What you need is perspective, space, a breath. Because reaction without reflection leads to patterns, and patterns repeated under stress tend to make the problem worse. So instead of spiraling into frustration or self-blame, ask yourself, what is this moment trying to teach me? Where is the lesson hidden beneath the disappointment? What can I carry forward from this, not as baggage, but as wisdom? That's the first real trait of resilient people. They turn setbacks into teachers. They don't avoid failure, they study it. They don't let it define them. They let it refine them. This mindset shift, from failure as evidence of inadequacy to failure as a source of insight, transforms pain into fuel. It allows you to view every stumble as part of the process, not the end of it. And once you adopt that lens, you stop fearing failure entirely. It becomes something you can face, learn from, and grow through. But resilience also requires something else: self-compassion. Too often, high achievers are hard on themselves during setbacks. They expect perfection, and when reality falls short, they attack themselves mentally. That inner criticism doesn't build discipline, it erodes it. Because no one stays consistent in an environment of shame. Resilient people know how to be firm with their standards but gentle with their self-talk. When they fall, they don't say, "You're a failure," they say, "You're learning." When they miss a step, they don't quit. They recalibrate. That inner softness doesn't make them weak, it makes them durable. And durability is exactly what's needed in the long run. You also need to build recovery systems into your life. Just as athletes schedule recovery days into their training plans, your mind needs periods of reset. Rest is not laziness. It is fuel. Breaks are not a lack of discipline. They are strategy. When you push without pause, you eventually burn out. But when you respect your limits and return to the work recharged, you stay consistent far longer than someone trying to force progress through fatigue. Learn what restores you. For some, it's a walk in nature. For others, it's journaling, time with loved ones, or moments of stillness without pressure to perform. These aren't indulgences, they're necessities. They're what allow you to get back up again and again without losing your spirit. Another pillar of resilience is adaptability. Discipline without flexibility becomes fragile. If your system only works under perfect conditions, it won't survive real life. Plans will need to change. Routines will be disrupted. You might move cities, change jobs, or face unexpected challenges that throw everything off. Adaptability means holding your goals tightly but your methods loosely. It means asking, given what I know now, what's the next best step, instead of clinging to what used to work. The most resilient people don't break when life shifts. They bend, adjust, and rebuild. They stay rooted in purpose, not in a rigid method. You'll also benefit from remembering this. Setbacks are not personal. They are part of the universal human experience. Every successful person, every disciplined person, every seemingly unshakable individual has failed. What makes them different is not that they avoided hard times. It's that they didn't let hard times become their identity. When you begin to see challenges as temporary, as changeable, as external to your core self, you no longer internalize failure as a reflection of who you are. That distance gives you strength. It lets you stand back up without shame and continue forward without hesitation. There's also immense power in real-life examples of resilience. Think of the people you admire most. Athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, leaders. Their stories are not defined by talent alone, but by their ability to recover from loss, defeat, injury, or public failure. These stories remind us that success is not a straight line. It's jagged. It loops. It pauses. And still, it continues. You are building your own story of resilience every time you return after falling short. Every time you recommit to your path after being thrown off course. Every time you decide that this setback will not be the thing that stops you. And with each moment like that, something powerful happens. Your confidence grows. Not the loud, boastful kind, but a quiet, unshakable knowing. You start to believe in your ability to handle whatever comes. That belief becomes your anchor. It's what allows you to plan with boldness and act with calm under pressure. In the end, resilience is what keeps your drive alive when circumstances challenge your will. It's not built by avoiding discomfort, but by stepping through it with self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and compassion. You won't always control what happens to you, but you will always control how you respond, how you grow, and how quickly you begin again. Setbacks are not the enemy of discipline. They are the forge where it's strengthened, and the stronger your resilience becomes, the more unbreakable your path forward will feel. Chapter 10. Your Relentless Future. You've come this far, and that already says something about you. It means you didn't just want information, you wanted transformation. And the difference between the two is enormous. Information can be gathered passively, but transformation, that requires commitment, focus, repetition, emotional strength, and above all, self-respect. Not the kind of self-respect that's loud or dramatic, but the kind that quietly says, I'm not going to abandon myself anymore. This final chapter isn't just a summary. It's an invitation to carry everything you've learned and begin living it, not in pieces, not when it's convenient, but as a way of being. Because the truth is, the world doesn't need more people who start things. It needs more people who finish, people who stay, people who show up after the excitement has faded, people who do the work even when the mood is gone. That's the foundation of an unbreakable life. Consistency without applause. You now understand the mechanisms behind procrastination, the structure of motivation, and the psychology of self-discipline. You've seen how small actions, done, daily build identity. And you've been reminded again and again that setbacks don't mean failure. They're part of the formula. But the question is no longer, do I know enough? The question is, what will I do with what I know, today, tomorrow, and every day after that? Let's talk about sustainability. Because relentless doesn't mean rushed. It doesn't mean burned out, depleted, or overwhelmed. The relentless life is not about being driven by pressure, but about being pulled by purpose. It means you pace yourself like someone planning to stay in the race for the long haul. You build systems that nourish your energy, not just spend it. You know when to push and you know when to pause. That rhythm is your responsibility. Many people will admire your growth, but they won't always understand the quiet work it took to maintain it. That's okay. Discipline is often invisible. It doesn't seek recognition. It's the invisible current beneath everything solid, everything lasting. The stronger it gets, the less you need to prove anything. You just live it. You embody it. That embodiment is what we call integration. When discipline moves from being something you practice to something you are, it stops feeling like pressure. It becomes peace. There is peace in waking up and knowing who you are. There is peace in honoring your commitments, not because anyone is watching, but because you respect yourself. There is peace in no longer negotiating with every excuse or emotion. And there is deep peace in realizing that you've built a life you don't need to escape from. As you look ahead, you'll notice that your path is no longer defined by dramatic highs or devastating lows. Instead, it's steady, clear, deliberate. This doesn't mean it will be free from difficulty. It means you'll know how to meet difficulty with grace. That is the core of emotional invincibility. It's not about being immune to pain, but about becoming someone who grows through it instead of shrinking beneath it. Your environment may change. Your circumstances may shift. But the strength you've built, the mindset you've crafted in that goes with you, it becomes part of how you process reality, part of how you recover, how you plan, how you decide what to focus on. It travels with you, and because of that, you become unshakable. Let's be clear. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel inspired. But that's not your metric anymore. You've outgrown the idea that feelings decide your actions. Now it's principles that guide you. Now it's commitment that moves you. Now it's clarity that carries you through moments of doubt. This is what it means to lead yourself. Leadership, especially self-leadership, doesn't mean perfection. It means responsibility. It means choosing progress even when no one is asking. It means showing up with intention, even when the payoff is far away. It means doing what matters consistently, because you understand the cost of inaction. So what's next? First, revisit your systems. Make sure they support the life you want, not just the tasks you want to complete. Are your routines sustainable? Are your goals aligned with your values? Are your daily actions still connected to something meaningful? This kind of review isn't about criticism. It's about staying awake, staying aligned. Second, build feedback into your life. Reflection is not optional. It's where wisdom is formed. Take time each week to pause and ask, what worked? What didn't? What do I need to shift? This doesn't have to take long, but those moments of reflection will sharpen your path. They'll keep you from drifting. They'll keep your vision clear. Third, protect your inputs. What you consume mentally is just as important as what you do physically. Surround yourself with things that strengthen your mindset. Books, podcasts, conversations, environments. Curate them like your future depends on it. Because it does. And, finally, help others. Not in a performative way, but from a place of overflow. Share what you've learned. Model it. Speak from experience, not ego. You don't need to be a coach or a speaker to lead. Your example is enough. Your quiet consistency is powerful. Your ability to keep showing up, especially when life gets messy, gives others permission to do the same. This is how you create a relentless future. One that doesn't just look good from the outside, but one that feels grounded, capable, and honest from the inside. You won't need hype. You won't need pressure. You'll simply continue, with strength, with structure, and with the certainty that you're becoming more of who you were meant to be. You've done more than read a book. You've rebuilt your operating system. You've rewired how you think about commitment, effort, and identity. You've redefined discipline not as punishment but as self-respect, not as restriction but as alignment, not as force but as freedom. And now you live it. You close this chapter not as someone searching for a breakthrough, but as someone being the breakthrough. So move forward with clarity, with rhythm, with grace, and with the quiet power of someone who no longer needs to prove anything, only to live what they now understand. Your relentless future is not ahead of you. It's already begun. Chapter 9. Living the Relentless Life. Integration discipline is not just something you practice when you're working. It's not limited to goals, schedules, or productivity apps. True discipline, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out, is something you live. It flows into every part of your day, quietly shaping your decisions, your routines, your relationships, and even how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Up to this point, you've learned how to overcome procrastination, how to build sustainable motivation, how to master your time, focus, and energy. You've built a solid foundation. You've strengthened the system. You've even learned how to bounce back when things fall apart. But now comes the most important shift of all: integration. This is where discipline stops being something you do and becomes a part of who you are. Living a relentless life isn't about intensity. It's about identity. It means that your discipline doesn't vanish the moment you leave your workspace or put your notebook down. It follows you into your home, your relationships, your rest, and your inner dialogue. It becomes the quiet backbone of how you show up to everything, not just the things you label as important. For many people, discipline falls apart when their environment changes. They can stay focused while working, but fall into chaos the moment they're off the clock. They stick to good habits when life is calm, but everything unravels during stress or transition. That's because they haven't yet built integration. They still separate work mode from life mode, as if discipline only belongs in certain places. But your real power begins when you stop dividing yourself. When you begin to live in alignment, one mind, one mission, no matter the setting. The first place to bring this shift is into your personal life. Ask yourself, does the way I spend time with others reflect the same care I bring to my personal goals? Do I listen with presence, speak with honesty, and hold space for the people around me? Discipline in relationships doesn't mean rigidity or control. It means being intentional, showing up on time, following through on what you say, giving your energy fully to the person in front of you. These are all forms of discipline, quieter perhaps, but just as powerful. Next, look at your health. Not just physical fitness, but how you rest, how you eat, how you treat your body on the days when you're not chasing a deadline. It's easy to think discipline is only about effort, but it's also about recovery. If you train your mind to push endlessly without learning when to pause, you're building imbalance, not strength. Living the relentless life means knowing when to act and when to restore. It means building in breaks that are deliberate, not accidental. It means learning how to rest without guilt, because you know that rest is part of the rhythm, not a sign of weakness. Another layer of integration is purpose. Without it, discipline can start to feel robotic, a never-ending list of tasks, with no emotional fuel behind them. But when everything you do is connected to a deeper reason, the structure becomes meaningful. You stop going through the motions and start feeling your own momentum. So ask yourself regularly, what is this all leading toward? Who am I becoming through these daily choices? Are my habits helping me grow into that person, not just in one area of life, but across the board? This is how you begin to live the relentless mindset. You choose to lead yourself, not in one part of your life, but in every space you enter. You bring focus to conversations, clarity to your values, consistency to your intentions. It's not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about closing the gap between what you say matters and how you actually live. And that includes knowing your limits. Part of being relentless is knowing when you're pushing from purpose and when you're pushing from pride. Burnout often hides behind ambition. That's why it's so important to listen, to notice when your energy is slipping, when your patience is thinning, when your joy is being replaced by exhaustion. The goal is not to force yourself into discipline at all costs. The goal is to build a way of living that you don't need to escape from. It's also worth remembering that integration is a gradual process. You won't get everything right at once. You might still have days where you slip, where you fall back into old patterns, where the effort feels heavier than usual. But that's okay. Integration isn't about being flawless. It's about returning to yourself again and again until it becomes natural. You're no longer chasing balance as an ideal. You're building it into your system. One boundary at a time, one habit at a time, one decision at a time. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like effort. It starts to feel like peace. Because now, your life supports your values. Your actions mirror your vision, and your future begins to feel less like something you're struggling to build, and more like something you're already living. This is the essence of integration. When the habits you've built don't just serve your goals, they serve your identity. When you no longer need reminders to do what matters because it's simply what you do. When even in uncertainty, even when life feels messy, you move with quiet direction, you adjust without abandoning, you continue without needing permission. At this point in your journey, you're not trying to be disciplined anymore. You are disciplined. You're not asking whether you can stay focused. You already trust that you will. You're no longer waiting for circumstances to line up perfectly. You're already moving. You're already building. You've become the kind of person who integrates excellence into every part of life, not by force, but by design. That's what it means to live relentlessly. And now, as we enter the final chapter, it's time to look forward, toward a future that is not just disciplined but powerful, purposeful, and completely yours.